Senator Wright.
Thank you, Ms Acting Deputy President. I'm pleased to rise to acknowledge the tabling of this final report of the Education, Employment and Workplace Relations Legislation Committee into my Greens colleague Adam Bant's Safety, Rehabilitation and Compensation Amendment, Fair Protection for Firefighters Bill 2011, which has been co-sponsored with Russell Broadbent MP and Maria Van Vakenu MP. It's the culmination of a great deal of hard work by the committee, and it's been a very positive experience to participate as a full member of the committee, being relatively new to the Senate. I've been impressed with the thorough process I've observed, overseen by the staff of the Secretariat, and I thank them for their work. I would also acknowledge the extensive work of the United Firefighters Union of Australia, which enabled site visits so that the committee could experience some of the work conditions of firefighters firsthand. And I say that advisedly, some, because of course there is no real way we can experience the work conditions that firefighters face on a daily basis in protecting life and property on behalf of the Australian community, but it did give us some insight into what some of those conditions would be like. The process enabled obtaining detailed information from local and international witnesses who have particular areas of expertise, such as in relation to personal protective equipment, the chemicals in the environment to which firefighters are exposed on a regular basis, international legal trends, and the extensive studies that have concluded conclusively that there is a direct causal link between exposure to toxins and carcinogens in their work environment and the contraction by firefighters of certain cancers. When the committee had the opportunity to experience firsthand some of the hazards encountered by firefighters in the form of flames and smoke, it brought home to me, I think, the degree to which firefighters, in carrying out the very nature of their job, are exposed to conditions over which they have almost no control and of which they have very little information before they enter the premises or deal with the fire or the hazard that they're needing to deal with. One of the things that I think the committee all learned was the degree of speed and the lack of time that's available to assess the risks of a situation, which in the normal course of occupational health and safety would be one of the first steps that are required by any responsible employer. But the nature of the beast in firefighting, I very clearly came to understand, was that time is of the essence, and that if the reaction isn't speedy enough, then it's almost not worth taking. I wouldn't say it's not worth, but it's difficult to get the fire under control, and the point of no return has been reached. So in a sense, firefighters don't have the luxury that many other employees might have to assess the risks of the situation, do what's necessary before they enter. In a sense, they are totally vulnerable to what the situation affords them. And the final aspect of the inquiry, which I feel and I think has already been acknowledged by my colleagues, was equally valuable, is the personal witness accounts from those firefighters and their families who have contracted cancer, and the devastating impacts of their illnesses on their health, obviously, but also on their sense of well-being. And it became very clear to me in the last committee hearing, when we heard from firefighters and their families, their sense of identity as strong, healthy, independent providers for their families. As we know, the level of health and fitness that's required of persons entering into firefighting service is higher than what you would expect in the ordinary population, and it was brought home to me the degree to which those people take pride in that sense of identity of who they are. And of course, contracting an illness like a cancer fundamentally erodes that sense of who they are and what it is that makes them individual and unique. I think it's only through hearing about the lived experience of people who face this issue that we can really gain some insight into what it means. And I'm grateful for those individuals who were prepared to share very personal experiences with attentive but definitely strangers in that way. In my view, perhaps if I could just say the three most surprising and disturbing aspects of the evidence that I heard in the course of the inquiry, and these were as follows. First of all, that the greatest hazards faced by firefighters are not necessarily or not only those hazards that members of the public would expect if asked, and that would be the flames, the fire and the risk of collapsing structures. But in fact, often unseen hazards in the form of toxins and carcinogens within the environment. The second surprising aspect to me was that despite the best efforts of employers, despite our best efforts with innovation and modern technology and all that's available, and Australia has some of the best personal protective equipment in the world, is what my understanding. Despite that, the personal protective equipment, the suits that are issued to firefighters, can never adequately protect them from these chemicals, these hazards that they confront in their working environment on a daily basis. And that's because in order to be able to breathe, the fabrics need to be able to breathe so that firefighters don't overheat. Internally, they have to be permeable to the atmosphere, and of course it's in the atmosphere that the unseen chemicals and carcinogens are carried through, and they can then be ingested through firefighters' skin. So every time they go into a fire, they actually know that they are vulnerable to these chemicals. And finally, I think the perhaps most confronting aspect for me was to understand that most firefighters who contract these cancers as a result of their work, and the evidence indicates that many of the cancers that we know that firefighters contract are related to their work, are not able to receive adequate compensation or financial support when they do contract their work-related illness because of the current legal impediment of having to prove causation, i.e. prove that it was exposure during their occupation to these chemicals that actually caused their particular cancer, even though the probability is that it was that exposure. As a lawyer in a previous life who had worked with people in relation to workers' compensation and litigation, I'm acutely aware of that onerous impediment to proving a legal case, which is called causation, where it's imperative that to be able to succeed, one has to prove the risk that was encountered and that there is a direct causal link between that and the consequence. And of course that's almost impossible, as we heard from these witnesses. So there was one person who had actually attempted a claim initially and was advised, probably wisely by their lawyer, that it would be too hard, and others had not even been able to go down that track. So they were essentially left without protection. And it's that injustice, that long-standing injustice, that this bill would seek to remedy. I think I can best sum up my views about that situation by going to the final paragraph of the committee report, which I'm happy to endorse on behalf of the Australian Greens, the entire report. The committee recognises that when a person spends their professional career inhaling and absorbing known and probably some as yet unknown carcinogens in the course of public service, it is the moral duty of the community to enable them to seek compensation should they fall ill as a consequence. I am really heartened by the collaboration that was involved in the original genesis of this bill and the fact that it was co-sponsored by the three parties in the parliament, three of the parties in the parliament. And I think that this is a challenge to us to achieve something, see Parliament doing what we're here for really and doing our job properly, and that is to acknowledge that there's a problem that needs to be fixed, to inform ourselves on the best evidence available, and then to take the action that we know is needed to achieve a just and a very long overdue result. And what a good thing it would be if we are able to, in the end, pass this legislation on a collaborative, non-partisan basis. What a matter of pride to be able to tell the Australian public that we've done this thing on behalf of firefighters who risk their lives and their health on behalf of the community every day. Thank you.